Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and in this pair of subscriber replays, courtesy of BionicTree, we're going to take a little look at some of the mid-tier premium tank destroyers in the Soviet tech tree. In each game, Bionic is also going to be at the bottom of the feeding pool, so we're kicking off with the SU-85I. This is a tank that's actually been in the game for some time, but for quite a long while it wasn't available for regular purchase. And what is it? Well, it's essentially a Panzer III chassis with a superstructure slapped on top with an 85mm gun poking out the front. Now, talking about that 85mm gun, it's a kind of unusual weapon. It's like the middle gun from the T-34-85, but slightly modified. So essentially, you get 160, I think it is, alpha damage up, 119 penetration, which is a bit unusual. And when you consider the rate of fire on this thing, which is very impressive, as you'll be able to see here, it means this machine has very good DPM. What about the downside? Oh, also, I should mention, because of that slightly lackluster penetration, gets preferential matchmaking. Tier 6 games are the worst that you will see. Now, what about the downsides? Well, there are a few. So I've already mentioned the penetration is a little dodgy. 119 penetration on a Tier 5 tank destroyer isn't great when you compare that with machines like the Stug and the SU-85. SU-85 gets 144, Stug gets 150 odd mil of penetration. Some of them get even higher, and the Death Toaster, the German machine, gets about 200. But they all get regular matchmaking, and this machine gets preferential matchmaking. Nice kill there. Other things that are a bit suboptimal about this tank: the gun depression is pretty poor, and you've got that kind of commander's hatch sticking on top, so that really does limit your ability to get stuck in if you need to. The shell velocity is also pretty terrible, and the accuracy leaves a lot to be desired. The mobility it gets the job done, but it's not something that you're going to really get excited about, and the armour is pretty much flat out worse than the regular SU-85. So what you've essentially got is a significantly gimped SU-85, but with preferential matchmaking, and if you can penetrate your target, then you have blistering DPM, even if some of your shots are going to miss. So there's a TOG a long way away. Hey, we hit him. Now, I mentioned that dodgy penetration. What have you got to make up for it? Well, if we look at the premium rounds, 160 alpha damage still, 161 penetration, which is still not fantastic. It's alright, but again, combined with the dodgy accuracy on this gun, you tend to find the premium ammo is not actually particularly good. And that if you're up against something with significant armour, you still have to aim for weak spots regardless of the ammo type you're firing, and you can still get plenty of bounces. So it can be a slightly frustrating machine to use, but it can be quite good fun. Here we go, a nice hit on the Churchill 3 there. And I must admit, the alpha damage DPM combination is very, very nice. Now, it is your traditional campy style TD, for want of a better phrase, and here you can see getting some bounces on the flat side of a Churchill. Ooh, T1 heavy. And you can see Bionic here is using it as such. I mean, this is not a machine you can really afford to get stuck in with until you're winning the game, and you can do so without serious danger of getting... Hey look, complete miss. Without serious danger of getting wrecked. Got spotted, managed to pick up the kill before he backed off, because we've got a little ELC who is driving around being a nuisance, but at least Bionic manages to put a shot into that guy before he backs off. And you can see here Bionic's got a mark of excellence on his SU-85I, so he clearly plays this machine a wee bit. I've got this machine as well. If you go back in my video list far enough, you can find a video, I think there's only one, that I did with this. But I haven't played mine in a little while, and I certainly haven't played mine as much as Bionic has. Certainly not recently. So I'm not going to try and make a review of this. I just thought I'd give you some details, because you don't really see this tank very much on the battlefield. Because it's nothing that special. It's kind of a rather, in many ways, a rather mediocre Tier 5 tank destroyer. Anyway, to the game in hand. Bionic's been spending the first half of it basically sitting behind a bush sniping people. And you can see some of the shots hit, some of them didn't. But he's managed to rack up a respectable amount of damage so far and pick up 2 kills into the bargain. But the scoreline is still even. Now, he is spotted in this location, and in this location he is vulnerable to anybody who's driven down the 1 line on this map. So he does have to be a little bit careful here, but it doesn't look like there's anyone there to take advantage of this vulnerability. Friendly team just lost 2 more machines, which is not great. That Crusader might be coming out from cover, and he's got the side of an AT2, but the problem with the AT2 is that even on the side it has over 100mm of armour plus tracks, so unless you catch the guy perpendicular, flat on if you will, it can actually be quite challenging for this gun to penetrate. So there you saw, for example, Bionic fired 3 shots at the guy. Ooh, a hit from the Crusader. The first and the third failed to do any damage, but the second, when the guy's side armor was flat on to Bionic, he was able to penetrate him. Takes a shot or 2 there from the Crusader, which shaves off. I mean, the Crusader has a tiny little 6-pounder gun. It's a 57mm gun, but a couple of hits from him was still able to shave off, what, a third of Bionic's health? I mean, 350 hit points is about standard for a tier 5 tank destroyer. This one gets 380, so that's a little bit more than that, which is nice, but nonetheless, it's not a lot of hit points to work with. And as you saw there, the armor isn't fantastic. Now, if we look at the minimap, we can see there are 5 enemy tanks spotted, and if we look at what machines are left on the enemy team, there are 6 of them. So, ooh, some people have moved around a little bit. VK3001H, yeah, the guy was about to disappear, so Bionic takes the shot in the hope of getting in some damage. So, there are, now that all of them have been spotted, we actually have 3 enemy tanks over by the base and 3 over by the friendly base here. So Bionic knows that he's not about to get flanked or anything like that, because we know where all of the enemy machines are. 82 was giving him some attention, which can be problematic. Chaffee appears to be running rings around the VK there, but there's an ELC which could be problematic, and Bionic is very lucky that the ELC only tracks him there. The ELC gets a very nasty 90mm gun that would have been perfectly capable of killing Bionic in 1 shot with 240 average alpha damage, but the aiming stats on the gun are not particularly good. So, yeah. From the impact of that shell, I'm wondering if the 82 is using the howitzer rather than the 6-pounder gun. That's certainly the gun I preferred. And now we have an interesting situation. The 82 is turning to engage the Chaffee. Bionic puts a shot into the 82 side, and the Chaffee manages to finish him off, probably with a premium round, because the Chaffee's penetration struggles to penetrate the 82 even from the side or the rear. And the friendly team have put in some good work polishing off a lot of the enemy tanks, and that just leaves this enemy Cromwell. He has Chaffee-related problems, and Bionic is lighting this guy up. Oh, that shot was a miss. Cromwell is coming around to deal with the Chaffee, but he's going to take 85mm shells to the face. There was a bounce. Yeah, that's the accuracy coming into play there. And that tracked him, and the Chaffee will probably pick up the kill, except he flubs his shot, so Bionic's able to pick up kill number 3, and that was the game. So that ended up being a pretty good game overall, especially when you bear in mind this is the worst matchmaking the SU-85I gets. So let's go and have a look at those results. So, perhaps unsurprisingly, that was an ace tanker game there for BionicTree, as well as Fire for Effect, Bruiser, a Confederate medal, which is always nice to pick up, and a High Caliber, which is another one to nice one to pick up. He achieves 2,952 damage in a tier 5 machine, which is a very nice damage result indeed. 3 kills and 1,246 experience. And if you look at the respective teams, the real difference between the two teams is that Bionic's team had a couple more people who put in 0 damage or very low damage counts, but they also had him who put in basically 3k damage. So that was really the tipping point. 1,246 experience might seem a little bit low for the 3,000 damage at tier 5, but you have to remember that, you know, for a lot of that game he was hanging back, he was sniping, because it's the nature of the machine. 30 shots fired, 27 hits, which is actually pretty good for this gun, especially considering the range a lot of those shots were taken at. 20 penetrations, and a chunk of that is going to be the accuracy, meaning that you don't hit exactly where you intend to, and instead the shot veers somewhere else and bounces off a dodgy angle. So that was actually pretty good for this gun. I've had games that have been had far worse stats than that, and of course the map was good for this tank as well. Lots of concealment and lots of big wide open killing grounds. Most of that damage was from longer range. Well, no, it was about a 50-50 split, to be fair. 1600 from more than 300 meters, so that leaves, you know, sort of 1300 from closer than that. So, you know, a good split. Blocked one shot with his armor. That was from the ELC. I mean, it reported it as blocked by armor, but it looked like the shot actually went into his tracks. Either way, it was pretty lucky. 10 enemies damaged, 3 killed, 3 actually spotted, which is unusual. And with a standard account, he made a 38,000 credit profit. Tier 5 premium tanks make money, clearly, as long as you don't spam premium ammo everywhere, but they're never going to make as much money as a Tier 8 premium. With a premium account, that would have been basically a 59,000 credit profit, and a nice amount of XP with the ×3 experience event for the time. So, that was the first game. Let's go and have a look at the second. Here's the second game then, and we're moving up a tier now. So this has gone from the SU-85I to the SU-100Y, the infamous box tank. For those who don't know, this is essentially a well, it's a Soviet tank destroyer with a 130mm Soviet naval gun poking out the front of it. If you go and play World of Warships, these are the sorts of guns you tend to find on the Soviet destroyers. It's a kind of interesting machine because on the one hand it doesn't have much in the way of armour, but it is big and bulky, hence the sort of moniker of box tank. If you also look at the ammunition choices, you've got your regular armour piercing rounds which do 440 alpha damage. Yeah, 196 penetration. The premium rounds, it's a bit like Hesh. The damage goes up to 510, but the pen comes down to 171. So some intelligent use of those can get you an awful lot of damage. And then you've got HE rounds, and these are large caliber HE rounds, so they do an awful lot of damage. Now, it's a bit like the previous game. Once again, I should also point out that the SU-100Y, unlike the SU-85I, does not get preferential matchmaking. So this thing sees tier 8 games. So like the previous game, BionicTree is bottom tier here. But, you know, even bottom tier, he's still got basically 200mm of penetration, wasn't it? Yeah, 196, 200, close as damn it. And he also, like the previous game, has a pretty favourable map. It's a fairly open map, so, you know, you don't really want to be getting stuck into the enemy with this tank in this sort of matchmaking. But he's got the open map in order to, well, play your traditional tank destroyer role, essentially. Comet has been spotted, there wasn't much to shoot at, and this gun is not what you'd call accurate. T-34, however, he might have a shot on. Nah, it doesn't hit. It was worth a go. Now, perhaps unfortunately, if you look at the team composition or the team spread, the friendly team doesn't actually have anyone up at the end of this little roadway, if you will, doing the spotting. It's the tank destroyers are the only ones over here. So if someone, like say for example that little T-71, drives along here, they're going to spot all these tank destroyers, and the tank destroyers are going to start taking an awful lot of fire. T-34-85 doesn't have that much of the guy to shoot at. Makes you wonder what's in the way. Might just be a little hillock or something. Takes the shot anyway, bazinga. It looks like the guy moved out of whatever cover he had, and a 130mm shell finished him off. People talk about the 122mm Soviet guns at tier 6 having 390 alpha damage and having a huge amount of alpha damage. You know, the guns found on the KV-85 and the SU-100. But this thing does more, and even more if you're willing to fire some of that premium armor-piercing ammo. It really is a monstrous gun. And a gun that has to be feared regardless of whether you're driving a tier 6 tank or a tier 8 tank or anything in between. So that would be tier 7 then. Takes that shot, doesn't have time to fully aim it because he gets spotted. The camera rating on this tank is not particularly fantastic. And there you can see 2 shots and he's down to 160 odd health. Tier 8 game for you. Those guns hurt. Now, there's a couple of layers of concealment between him and the IS-2 here, so if he takes that shot, he shouldn't get spotted, unless there's someone, you know, in a really funky spotting position, and there's only one layer of concealment in the way. So what he's effectively doing here is double bushing. He's keeping two bushes, pretty much, between himself and the bad guys. The slight difficulty with that, so the benefit of that, when you fire your gun, it negates or severely impacts on the camo rating provided to you by any bush within 15 meters. So by double bushing you get around that, so you have one bush next to you that when you fire will no longer give you the camo rating, but the second one will, basically. The problem is that you can't actually see where the target is. All you can see is the physical outline, which can be a little frustrating. I should also point out, sorry, with the double bushing, the other thing with it is that when you... it's only one... the nearest bushes, if you will, within 15 meters, whose camo gets negated. Any that are further away won't, even if they are within that 15 meters. Anyway, SU-100Y take off a massive amount of his health, even though that was a below average damage roll. And the team are currently slightly losing now. The tank destroyers have fallen back. Interestingly, the enemy are still getting spotted and not really, as far as I can see, being able to put that much effective fire into these friendly TDs. I mean, the T-28 Prot, the SU-100Y, BionicTree here, and the Hellcat have all taken some damage, but not as much as I would have expected. Okay, perhaps the T-28 prototype, fair enough. There's no artillery in this game, and at long range his 200mm of frontal armour will prove challenging. But the Hellcat has no armour, and okay, the SU has more armour than a Hellcat, but that doesn't really take very much and doesn't really say much for the quality of its armour. And if you look at the team composition, there was a single light tank on this team. What was it? It was a Bulldog, but he's long since dead. The enemy T-71, however, is still rocking and rolling, and indeed, there he is. Now, BionicTree pulls back a little bit. That's another low damage roll. 440 alpha damage on this gun, and he, well, last two rolls have been for less than 400. That's a bit unlucky for Bionic, but you know, it comes to something when you can say at tier 6 a 380 odd damage roll is a bit unlucky. T-34 has been spotted again. In fact, there's a pair of T-34s. They are actually platooned, and so Bionic is going to aim in on the one on the lowest health to try and pick up the kill. I'd have let that shot aim in a bit more, if I'm honest. He took that without it being really properly aimed, but SU-100Y picks up the kill anyway. The other T-34 is backing off. This was a very optimistic move from that platoon. There we go, 531, a nice high damage roll that time to pay off for the low ones, and basically that top tier heavy tank platoon just threw their tanks away. If they'd been paying attention to the minimap and to how the game was progressing, they'd have known there were still tank destroyers down in this corner, and if they have any knowledge of this map, they should have known those tank destroyers would have had shots into their flanks. That was just a bizarre and a silly move on their part. They were literally just throwing their tanks away. Anyway, never interrupt the enemy when they're making a mistake. So, the last spotted T-71 and IS-2 over here. SU-100Y and the T-28 prototype have been spotted as well. We just don't know where that Jagdpanther is. Sorry about that, in case you haven't yet gathered. I am currently... well, I do seem to have a bit of a sniffle. And I'm trying to get these videos recorded in advance because I will be away for a week, so I'm just making sure that you guys have got something to entertain yourselves with in my absence. So yeah, it's that Jagdpanther. We don't quite know where that Jagdpanther is. He has a kill, so he's not AFK. But, yeah, we don't actually know where he is. He's not been spotted this game so far. T-71 has cropped up again. That T-71 has been a right little menace. Well played to him. He's got a good map for it, and he has been a massive, massive nuisance. Now the problem is now with the death of that STA-1, if you look at what the friendly team have, neither the SUs or the T-28 prototype, being tank destroyers, have particularly great view range. And the Super Pershing, whilst its view range is alright, it doesn't have very good camo and it's not exactly very quick, so it's not really going to be running around scouting for you. It just can't do it. Looking at the enemy team, however, and this is in my opinion the major difference, they also have a trio of tank destroyers, so don't rely on them too much for their view range. An IS-2, again, view range not really its strong point, but they have this T-71, it's worth taking the shot. T-28 prototype executes him, very well done to him. They had that T-71, which was providing view range for their team, and on this map that is of paramount importance. So that was actually a really important kill. Now, in terms of view range, the two teams are on a much more equal footing. And in fact, you could probably argue that the friendly team have a bit of an advantage, because I'm pretty sure a T-26E4 has better view range than an IS-2. Even if the mobility is kinda comparable. In fact, the IS-2 may even be a bit nippier. Speaking of the IS-2, oh, hello! Oh, gun arc there, giving Bionic problems. Again, notice he pulls back behind, enough concealment that he won't get spotted when he pulls the trigger, rather than just pulling the trigger as soon as the guy is in his targeting reticule. So this is some nice use of bush mechanics and camouflage here. And he has to. I mean, he's on 166 health. Bionic has to use these camouflage mechanics to keep himself alive. Now, T-28 prototype should be able to deal with the IS-2. Oh, and the Jagdpanther has finally been spotted. I was about to say the only caveat is if the IS-2 loads heat ammo, he can go straight through the T-28 prototype's frontal armour. And 421, that's another low damage roll. Oh well, c'est la vie. Jagdpanther scuttles off on 191 health. IS-2 is on 501, and he does not like those odds. Can't really say I blame him. 423 into the side of the turret. Hopefully the Jagdpanther does not execute Bionic here. That would be really sad. IS-2, however, is dead. T-28 prototype on the enemy team. This is very unlikely to penetrate. Gosh. Now there are some little flat parts on the to each side of the gun on the turret of the T-28 prototype, but if memory serves, they're still about 200mm thick. And whilst this gun does have close to 200mm of penetration, that guy is 500, 600 meters away, so I am surprised that Bionic was able to penetrate that guy. But nonetheless, he was, so we shall take it. If this shot hits, I will giggle. Well, there we go. Slimmest of shots. 13cm gun here, doing its job. Down to 1 round of regular armor piercing ammo now. Still got 4 rounds of that premium AP and 8 rounds of HE. I'm not sure I would carry that many HE rounds on this tank. I mean, being a large caliber gun, its ammo capacity is a little on the limited side. Oh, there's the SU-100Y, and Bionic is just telling his team the Jagdpanther's got around 100 health left. So, blind shot? No. Doesn't want to waste the shell. I can understand that. And there we go. He's been spotted again. No, he's ducked down. Did I call that an SU-100M1 earlier on? If I did, SU-100Y is what I meant. Jagdpanther, however, nice clean shot on him. Don't know how many other people have got a shot on him. Plenty by the seams of it, as the Super Pershing polishes him off. And now it's just the SU-100Y. Bionic loads a premium round to get more damage out of the shot. I think that was a mistake. I assume he thought he was down the other side of the ridge, because as it turns out, he had a clean shot on the guy that he could have taken, and he actually switches back to armor piercing now, because the guy only has 400 health. So yeah, he'd have been better off just sticking with that armor piercing round. The thing with switching ammo types when you have is that you can sometimes leave yourself exposed. I've fallen into this trap myself. And it's more problematic on a gun with a long reload as this one. And he's switching back to premium armor piercing again. I guess it makes the kill a bit more guaranteed rather than relying on not getting a low damage roll. But all this switching of ammo types isn't really necessary. And there they go, the guy's on 190 health and the guy's dead anyway. So Bionic could perhaps have put in another damaging shot toward the end there if he hadn't been switching ammo types. But nonetheless, that was a good performance. It was a very, it was a textbook tank destroyer game, basically. Now some of you may think, oh, that's not particularly some people think that's not particularly exciting, but it was a very well played game anyway. And if you have when we have a look at the battle results, you'll see that Bionic performed very well indeed. So we can see that was Bionic's first mark of excellence in the SU-100Y, and he got an ace tanker, fire for effect, and a high caliber medal. Now remember, he's bottom tier in this game. Just bear that in mind. And he achieved, well, you can kind of see it in the title there, 3,815 damage, 2 kills, 1,318 base experience. You know, a lot of those shots, if we go back to see the targets he actually shot, a lot of those shots were against higher tier targets. T-34-85, same tier. T-34, 2 tiers higher. Jagdpanther, 1 tier higher. T-71 IS-2, 1 tier higher. T-28 Prototype, 2 tiers higher. SU-100Y, same tier. So a lot of those shots were against people at a higher tier than Bionic. Most of that damage was from a distance of more than 300 meters. You can see the accuracy of the gun coming into play there as well. 17 shots fired, 9 hits. All the ones that hit penetrated, but only 9 hits. Damaged 7 enemy tanks, killed 2. Picked up a 43,000 credit profit, which actually surprises me. I thought these shells would have been more expensive. Usually, I mean, 122mm shells tend to be around the 1,000 credit per shot margin, so I thought I would have expected resupply ammunition costs of being around 20,000 credits, unless he had some of this ammunition pre-bought or something. But I don't own this machine, so I don't know. With a premium account, that would have been a 71,000 credit profit, which is very respectable. And again, times 3 experience bonus, leading to a very nice experience score indeed, and that will further train up one of Bionic's Soviet tank destroyer crew. I know he does like his Soviet tank destroyers. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that pair of games, pair of tank destroyer games, bottom tier, showing a bit of Soviet muscle. If you did, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel. Bionic actually has a YouTube channel of his own. I will try and remember to put a link in the video description, so by all means feel free to go and check that out, and I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.